Rebecca Koster thought she was outsmarting the system, but Elias Marek had been watching her from the beginning. When her burned body was found in the woods, every trace of who she was had been removed, except one. A tiny tattoo on her ankle became the only clue in a chilling case that would unravel a hidden network built to erase lives. What Rebecca uncovered was never meant to be found. What she left behind was never meant to survive. ChatGPT said, on a cold March morning. Norbridge, Illinois. The peaceful silence of Ashwood Creek was broken by the sound of running footsteps. Theron Murch, a retired firefighter and early morning jogger, was following his regular trail route through the woods when he noticed a strange smell in the air, sharp, acidic, and unmistakably unnatural. As he slowed his pace, something caught his eye just off the path, buried halfway beneath damp leaves and twisted branches. At first glance, he thought it was a burned log, blackened and twisted. But as he approached, a wave of horror washed over him. It wasn't a log. It was a human body. The corpse was unlike anything the Norbridge Police Department had seen in years. The flesh was charred, the limbs twisted unnaturally, and every identifying feature had been obliterated. No clothes, no hair, no fingernails. And the face had been so thoroughly destroyed, it was impossible to determine gender at first glance. Yet one thing remained, a small tattoo on the left ankle. It depicted a crescent moon wrapped in the rays of a sun. The ink was scorched but still visible, oddly untouched by the flames that had ravaged the rest of the body. It was the only thing the killer had left behind, or perhaps the only thing they missed. Detective Marella Kint arrived at the scene. Just after 7 a.m., she had worked in Norbridge for over 20 years and had seen many difficult cases, but this one felt different. The condition of the body wasn't just the result of an attempt to conceal identity. It was calculated, purposeful. Someone had taken the time to remove every trace of who this person had been. Someone had made sure this body would remain a mystery. The crime scene unit began collecting evidence. But there was little to work with. The surrounding area had no drag marks, no footprints, no tire tracks. The body had either been burned at the scene or transported post-mortem, but even that was hard to tell. A thorough search turned up one strange item buried nearby in the soil. A scorched metal button, possibly from clothing, though it didn't match any material on the body. Forensics would take days to return even the most basic results. Back at the station, Kint reviewed recent missing persons reports. 2 names stood out, but one matched the timeline almost too perfectly. Rebecca Koster, a 24-year-old psychology student at Norbridge University, reported missing just 13 days earlier. According to the file, Rebecca was last seen leaving her part-time job at a bookstore near campus. Her phone had gone dark shortly after midnight, and her apartment had shown no signs of struggle. Her roommate, a close friend, told officers Rebecca had been more withdrawn recently, less talkative, and seemed like she was keeping something to herself. Kint pulled up Rebecca's social media profiles. Nothing suspicious at first glance. Pictures of university events, birthday gatherings, and a few vacation shots. But in one image, taken during a beach trip with friends, Kint saw the same crescent moon and sun tattoo on Rebecca's ankle. It was enough to request dental and medical records for comparison. Though deep down, Kint already knew what the results would say. Meanwhile, news of the discovery spread rapidly through the quiet town. Media outlets speculated wildly, and whispers of serial killers, cult rituals, and revenge killings filled the air. But Kint wasn't interested in gossip. She focused on what she did know. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase a woman's identity. And yet, they left the one thing that would inevitably lead her back to the surface. Kint stared at the photograph of the tattoo. Why leave it? Why destroy everything else and leave this one symbol untouched? Was it a mistake? A message? Or something more personal? The questions outnumbered the answers. But what she did know was simple. Whoever killed Rebecca Koster hadn't planned on her being found. And now that she had been, the truth was about to unravel, thread by brutal thread. Rebecca Koster had always presented the image of a composed, driven young woman. To the outside world, she was just another bright university student with a promising future, friendly, focused, and fiercely independent. Her professors at Norbridge University spoke highly of her discipline. Her classmates described her as helpful but somewhat private. Her boyfriend, Dallin Scorn, said she was the type to overthink everything and keep her emotions guarded. But as the investigation into her death deepened, it became clear that the Rebecca they all knew was only a fragment of a much more complicated person. Detective Marella Kint began by retracing Rebecca's final days before her disappearance. Surveillance footage from the bookstore where she worked showed her leaving at 9:12 p.m. Alone and looking distracted, she didn't head directly home. Her phone pinned once at a cell tower on Eastmore Boulevard, then vanished completely. That same night, her bank account showed an unusual deposit, $4,000, transferred from an anonymous digital wallet. It was the third such deposit in less than 2 months. There were no known jobs or side projects listed in her financial records that could explain the sudden bursts of cash. Her laptop, seized from her apartment, offered more cryptic clues. Hidden behind encrypted folders were chat logs and private messages sent from an account with the username Linaria. The conversations were with various strangers on private forums that appeared to revolve around behavioral science, identity theory, and something referred to as psychological dissociation workshops. Some of the users spoke in coded terms, using phrases like mirror shedding, identity compression, and total erase mode. It sounded like jargon, possibly even nonsense, but it was consistent and deliberate. One particular name kept appearing in these threads: Ewan Drex. The messages exchanged between Linaria and Drex were longer, more personal. He praised her intelligence and often referred to her as a true observer. She, in return, asked him detailed questions about memory suppression, the ability to disconnect from one's own personality, and how long such effects could last. Kint found a disturbing message dated just a week before Rebecca's disappearance. "I think I'm close to seeing it the way you do. It's like walking into a house with no mirrors. You know you're there, but there's nothing to show you who you are." It became evident that Rebecca had been drawn into something far outside the boundaries of normal academic research. She had been attending meetings. Not the kind you would find on campus, but private, unregistered gatherings held in rented apartments and hotel conference rooms around the city. These events weren't listed publicly. Invitations were issued through code words shared in online threads. When police attempted to trace the IPs behind the forums, they found themselves rerouted through multiple layers of masking servers, some linked to offshore domains and dormant academic institutions. Her academic advisor, Dr. Felix Marin, was stunned when confronted with this information. Rebecca had never mentioned any independent research. She hadn't submitted any formal proposals or ethics reviews, standard procedure for psychological studies. But he did recall one odd thing. 6 months ago, she had asked for a list of case studies involving identity disorders and military interrogation techniques. He'd found the request strange but not alarming at the time. As investigators spoke to more people in her circle, another version of Rebecca began to emerge. Her roommate remembered her practicing breathing exercises at night, sometimes standing in front of the mirror for hours. Her boyfriend noticed she'd been forgetting small things, birthdays, conversations, even people they'd met together. She had once told him she felt like she was watching her life from outside her body. The portrait forming was no longer of a student who stumbled into danger. It was of someone who had willingly walked into a shadowy world, trying to study it or possibly escape into it. Rebecca's actions suggested intent, but her reasons remained buried, just like her body had been. And as Detective Kint stood in Rebecca's silent apartment, staring at the empty bookshelf, she realized something. Chilling, Rebecca hadn't just been researching identity. She had been trying to erase her own. The confirmation of Rebecca Koster's identity shifted the investigation into overdrive. The tattoo on her ankle, once a mere curiosity, had become the anchor for everything to follow. While most of her physical features were gone, there was one thing her killer hadn't accounted for: a metal implant in her left ankle, placed during surgery after a hiking injury 2 years earlier. It was a custom-fit titanium piece, logged in her hospital records under a unique serial number. When the forensic team cross-checked it, the match was undeniable. The burned body found in Ashwood Creek was Rebecca's. Detective Marella Kint now had a name for the victim, but not for the killer. The question that haunted her was still the same: who had gone to such horrifying lengths to erase Rebecca's identity? The degree of mutilation was far beyond panic or impulse. It suggested premeditation, knowledge of forensic methods, and a cold, methodical mindset. Whoever had done this wanted Rebecca to vanish, not just physically, but from memory. From records, from existence. With the tattoo and implant confirming the victim, Kint began to re-examine everything with fresh urgency. The tattoo artist, Zuri Kale, offered unexpected insight. She remembered Rebecca vividly. Rebecca had come in months earlier asking for something eternal, something she'd never remove. The sun and moon design was Rebecca's own sketch. Symbolic, Zuri said, of light within darkness. But what stood out even more was a strange follow-up visit Rebecca made weeks later. She had returned alone, and her question unsettled Zuri. She wanted to know how tattoos could be erased without detection. Not removed, not faded, but erased like they were never there. She had asked about burning, acid, skin grafts. It hadn't sounded hypothetical. It had sounded like research. Zuri remembered Rebecca leaving quietly that day, and she never saw her again. But it was clear that the tattoo was not simply a personal design. It was part of something larger, something intentional. And now, ironically, it was the very thing that ensured her body couldn't be lost forever. Back at police headquarters, the digital forensic team had uncovered more encrypted files on Rebecca's laptop. One was a folder titled Thread Room. Inside were chat logs, links, and partial screenshots of an online community that operated under layers of anonymity. Phrases like the House of Masks, imprint removal, and clean exits appeared regularly. Most of the profiles had no images, no real names, and no traceable emails. But one stood out: Ewan Drex. His handle had posted numerous articles and guides about psychological detachment and advanced methods of identity shedding. He talked about the mind as a structure that could be deconstructed piece by piece: memory, habits, appearance, even name. It wasn't just theory. He referred to real-world tests, past participants, and something ominously called the Empty Room Protocol. Detective Kint ran the name through every database: local, federal, international. Nothing. No licenses, no employment, no property. Ewan Drex was either a ghost or a construct. But fragments of metadata buried in the forum logs revealed IP locations bouncing from abandoned server farms, mostly across Eastern Europe and South Asia. Some signals bounced back into Norbridge itself. Someone in town had been accessing the network. Kint turned her focus to a list of hotels and short-term rentals near Rebecca's last known location. One name recurred: a studio rented under the name Sea Vale. Surveillance footage from the building lobby showed a man in a baseball cap and sunglasses meeting with Rebecca the week before she disappeared. His face was partially visible. Facial recognition came back empty, but an analysis of his gait and proportions suggested he was the same man seen in other rental footage across town. He was always alone, always careful. And then, in a rental ledger, a clue: a check-in form where the name Ewan Drex had been signed by hand. A sloppy mistake in an otherwise flawless effort to stay hidden. Kint knew it could be fake, meant to mislead, but it was the first tangible link between the digital world Rebecca had been pulled into and the real, one that ended her life. She looked at the shaky signature, wondering if this was the break they needed, or if it was just another mask, hiding the face of someone who'd mastered the art of disappearing. The breakthrough came from a detail so minor it was almost missed. A background check on Seavale. The alias used to rent the studio where Rebecca had last been seen, revealed a trail of connected transactions. A storage unit on the edge of Norbridge, listed under a fake name, but paid for using the same anonymous digital wallet that had made deposits into Rebecca's account, caught Detective Marella Kint's attention. The unit was located in an industrial complex surrounded by barbed wire fencing and abandoned warehouses, a place where no one asked questions and nothing seemed out of place. Armed with a warrant, Kint and her team arrived at the facility. The storage manager, a disinterested man with stained overalls and thick glasses, led them to the far end of the compound. Unit 1177 looked like any other, rusting, padlocked, silent. But when they cut it open, they stepped into something entirely unexpected. Inside the storage unit was a narrow stairway leading down to a hidden basement. It had been carefully built, concealed behind wooden panels and insulated to block sound. What lay beneath wasn't just strange, it was chilling. The room was roughly 10 feet wide, lit by rows of dim, flickering bulbs. Every wall was lined with reflective surfaces, broken mirrors, camera screens, and glossy black panels. At the center stood a medical gurney, old and stained. Nearby were boxes filled with wigs, glasses, makeup kits, and prosthetic scars. It was a workshop for changing faces, for becoming someone else. Along one wall was a row of monitors showing grainy, time-stamped footage, some of empty rooms, others of people seated, staring at their reflections. One of the screens showed Rebecca. She was sitting on a metal chair, still wearing the same jacket she had on when last seen alive. Her expression was blank, distant, as if she wasn't fully there. Detective Kint recognized the signs of coercion, or something worse. There was no panic in Rebecca's eyes, no plea for help. Instead, there was resignation. Next to the monitors were storage drives, meticulously labeled by date and session number. They included files with cryptic titles: Echo Trial 5, Stage 3 Compliance, Full Mirror Break. Each video showed different people, but the pattern was the same: repetition, silence, eventual detachment. It looked less like torture and more like a psychological experiment, one meant to strip people of their sense of self. DNA collected from the room matched not only Rebecca, but 2 other missing women from out of state, one from Ohio, the other from Vermont. Their cases had gone cold. Now they were part of something far bigger, something that had no name, no official records, and no clear motive beyond complete control and erasure. Rebecca's files were the most detailed. One of the final videos showed her being handed a small mirror. She looked into it, held it to her face for nearly 5 minutes, and then slowly turned it face down. The timestamp was just days before her body was found. Kint stood watching the footage in silence, trying to decipher the purpose of it all. Who was filming these sessions? And more importantly, why leave them behind? Forensics uncovered a single fingerprint on the gurney. It was partial but matched a previous record tied to a man named Elias Marek, a known digital manipulator suspected in a 2017 identity fraud ring that vanished before prosecution. Marek had been using the name Ewan Drex during that investigation. He had never been caught, and his last known location had been Norbridge. With a new name to pursue and mounting evidence of something deeply organized, Kint realized that Rebecca hadn't simply been murdered, she had been deconstructed. Her identity had been taken apart piece by piece, in a system designed to erase people so effectively that only shadows of them remained. But one thing had gone wrong. They had underestimated Rebecca's determination to be found, even in death. Tattoo, the implant, the footage. Pieces she had either chosen to leave behind or ones her killer failed to eliminate. Whether intentional or accidental, they formed the fragile thread that led Kint to this hidden basement, a mirror line. Tomb where identities were unmade and names were forgotten. But not Rebecca's, not anymore. Asterisk. 2 weeks after the discovery of the mirror-lined basement, the investigation reached a terrifying turning point. A man named Calix Verne came forward, gaunt, paranoid, and visibly shaken. He claimed to be a former software engineer who had worked for a secretive organization operating under the name Mirrorthread. He said he'd heard about Rebecca's case on the news and couldn't stay silent any longer. Detective Marella Kint listened carefully as Calix described a system designed not to kill people, but to erase them. According to him, Mirrorthread specialized in psychological dismantling, training individuals to destroy every trace of their existence and helping certain clients disappear off the grid completely. He confirmed what Kint had already begun to piece together. Rebecca had infiltrated the group under false pretenses. While others were participating as recruits in identity erasure experiments, she had been secretly collecting information to expose them. She wasn't just a curious student, she had a purpose. Rebecca had embedded herself within Mirrorthread, pretending to be a participant but taking mental notes, storing screenshots, saving encrypted voice memos. She was preparing to leak everything to the press or possibly a federal agency. Calix said she was one of the smartest people he had ever seen in the program. But she made one mistake. She stayed too long. Kint and her team finally gained access to one of the last encrypted files found on Rebecca's laptop. It was a draft email, never sent, addressed to an unnamed reporter. In it, Rebecca described the Mirrorthread project as an ongoing operation where personal identity is viewed as a disease to be surgically removed. She described procedures like memory collapsing, in which subjects were made to question the authenticity of their childhood, and visual reprogramming, where mirrors and lighting were used to distort self-perception. Rebecca warned that the group wasn't just operating in Norbridge. It had chapters, coordinators, backup locations. The most disturbing part came in the last few lines of her message. She mentioned that she believed one of the coordinators, the man she had known as Ewan Drex, had begun to suspect her. She wrote, "He doesn't ask questions, he watches. I think he knows I'm not one of them. If something happens to me, I want someone to know I tried." That someone became Marella Kint. By now, warrants had been issued in multiple states. Hidden servers were being tracked, and several low-level operatives connected to Mirrorthread were arrested. Each claimed to know little, describing their involvement as guided research. But they all spoke the same way, calmly, without emotion, as if rehearsed. It was like talking to people who had erased their own convictions. The deeper Kint dug, the more it felt like a cult dressed in scientific language. Then came a development no one expected. A customs report from Canada flagged a man attempting to cross into Quebec with forged documents. His fingerprint partially matched the print found on the gurney in the basement. The name on his passport was fake, but a scar on his wrist matched. An old injury logged under Elias Merrick. He was arrested without incident. During interrogation, he refused to speak. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't show fear. He simply stared at his reflection in the one-way glass, hour after hour, as if waiting for it to change. There wasn't enough physical evidence to tie Marek directly to Rebecca's murder, not yet, but Kint knew. She had seen the cold precision. In the storage basement, the matching timelines, the aliases, the erased data trails. This wasn't just about one victim. Rebecca's death had opened a door into a network designed to function in the shadows, a system built to vanish people so completely that even their memories could be questioned. But Marella Kint refused to let that happen to Rebecca. She ensured the story reached the public. The footage was shown to federal investigators. The details of Rebecca's research were published. Her real name, her face, and the truth she had risked everything to reveal were made permanent. In the end, the sun and moon tattoo wasn't just a symbol of identity. It became her legacy. Rebecca Koster had walked into the darkest corners of human control and manipulation. And through her final act, she exposed it to the light. The one thing they couldn't erase was the story she left behind. Asterisk.